This is Radio Dawn 107.6 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome and good afternoon to all our listeners. We are bringing a new brand show today which is from every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. Which is named as Health is Wealth. Yes, we all know that health is wealth, and it will be on live Radio Dawn 107.6 FM live transmission. And I'm your host, as usual, Mashal Tariq, and I'll be bringing this new show for you, which is Health is Wealth. And every week, we will be talking about how to take better care of yourselves and your body, mind, and soul. And for that, we will bring any specialist, any directors related to medical bodies, or somebody, very expert, and we will talk about on every show a different subject related to your health. The show will be from simple health tips to useful advices from doctors and guests. This show is all about helping you and your family live healthier, happier lives. So stay with us, join the conversation, and remember, when it comes to life, nothing is more valuable than your health. Because truly, I must say, health is wealth. And stay tuned in today on Radio Dawn 107.6 FM live transmission with your host Mashal Tariq. And I'll tell you in a while who is the guest joining us. If any one of you want to participate in our show and call us for any questions, you can call on telephone lines 0115-8411-800 or 0115-8411-900. You can also send your feedback on our WhatsApp number, which is 07312139494. Moreover, you can email us on info@radiodawn.com. So, today's conversation, we are diving into a subject that touches millions of lives around the world, and the disease is Alzheimer's. With us today is a very special guest going to join us, which is Dr. Sonia Miller, which is a medical director of Torex Pharmaceuticals, a company at the forefront of developing innovative treatments and for neurodegenerative diseases, especially dementia and Alzheimer's. So Dr. Miller, let me just introduce and tell you about a little bit about her before she comes live on our show. She's just trying to connect with our Restream link, and Dr. Miller brings decades of experience in clinical research and neurology. And today we are speaking with her about a promising new therapy being developed by Torex Pharmaceuticals that focuses on different targets in the brain. Not the usual amyloid plaques, but something called tau protein. We will be talking more about it because she's an expert and she will be able to explain more about on this medical terminologies or terms. We will be learning more about what makes this new treatment different, how it's been performing in trials, and what it could mean for patients and families living with Alzheimer's. So let's welcome Dr. Sonia Miller on our show.
Hello, Nashka. How are you? Delighted to meet you. Thanks for inviting me today. Thanks for inviting me.
Hello, good afternoon, Dr. Sonia Miller. How are you doing?
Good. Hi. Delighted to meet you. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me
Can you
spend some
hear
time
me?
with
Your
you today.
sound is a bit feeble. Let me just adjust your sound. Yeah, I think there is Dr. Somebody else also has joined on the restream with us. 1 minute. All right. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to our show, Dr. Sonia Miller. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Thank you. I can hear you very
Yes, your
well. Can you
sound
hear
is a bit
me?
feeble. I'm just trying to adjust if it's something from here, technically.
That's such a great word, a bit
Yeah,
feeble. I don't
just a
think
bit
I've been
feeble,
called
and I'm
feeble
just
before.
trying to adjust here. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Is it your mic?
Hello.
I'm
Hi.
fine. How are you doing? Busy day? Busy day?
Excellent. Yeah, very. And I wanted to say thank you very much for letting me spend some
That's
time with you
great.
today.
And
Thank you.
thanks to you actually for taking it time for our audience and our listeners from your valuable. I know you are such a busy
Mhm.
person and you have taken out time for us. And it's really a pleasure to have you with us on our show. And I believe there was somebody else also was trying
Thank
to
you. No, it's
connect with
really important.
us. I'm just trying to make sure the sound is clear. I hope it goes good now. So, Dr. Miller, once again, a warm welcome and a good afternoon. And as you know, this is a Dementia Week 2025 and a spotlight on a promising new treatment. And we are understanding the challenges what we dementia is the leading cause of death in UK and one of the most urgent global health crises of our time. It affects more than what I have my study and research done. It is affecting more than 50 million people worldwide, and moreover,
Mhm.
it has a number projected to rise 78 million by 2030, which is a forecast and expectations, and 139 million by 2050. Correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I have just done my research.
No,
And Alzheimer's disease, the most common form of dementia, it accounts for around
mhm.
60 to 70% of all cases, and it devastates individuals and families and carries a global economic cost expected to exceed $2 trillion by 2030. So before we start on this and take more details from you, Doctor, just want to know of those in our audience who may not be familiar with this disease, Alzheimer's and dementia, could you give us a simple overview of what
Mhm.
Alzheimer's disease is and how it affects the brain?
Yes, of course, of course. And no need to correct you. You were absolutely spot on and perfect with all of your figures, and
Thank you.
that was amazing. And as you said, they're just eye-watering numbers, and the costs to not just in economic but in social costs and healthcare costs are enormous. So, as you correctly pointed out, dementia is an umbrella term. And usually the first symptoms are memory loss. So often the terms are
Mhm.
used interchangeably. And Alzheimer's is the commonest cause, as you pointed out, also about
Mhm.
60 to 70%. But there are other causes as well. Vascular accounts for
Okay.
about 20%. There's Lewy body, young onset, frontotemporal. And one that's coming more to the fore and understanding is CTE, or the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the
Oh,
footballing injury, if you like, where people get the
all right.
repeated concussion, the bangs on the head, and they then develop dementia, and far earlier, in fact. So there's a whole range of causes, but Alzheimer's is the commonest, and most people will use those terms interchangeably. So when they talk about dementia, they're usually talking about Alzheimer's disease. And you asked about what the features there of it are. There's two proteins that are absolutely normal in brain function. One is called amyloid, one's called tau. Tau is the more complex and very, very crucial in terms of your brain cell structure and function, how the brain cells talk to one another. And in Alzheimer's, both of these proteins go wrong, if you like. They misfold, they misbehave, they aggregate in such a way that they damage the brain cells and can't perform their normal function. And this is what leads to the progression of symptoms for people. As this takes hold and more brain cells then are unable to function and die, the symptoms progress. So what starts maybe as a little bit of memory loss or memory issue will progress over a period of time, and it is a progressive disease, a progressive neurodegeneration, and that may occur rapidly or over many years, and eventually to the point where people are unable to perform their usual activities of daily living. So they find it hard to dress or to navigate their way to the shops or have conversations with people, and ultimately lose their own identity. They don't understand anymore who they are and the people around them and why they're important.
That's actually, when hearing from you, it's it's a bit kind of serious issue when people don't recognize and they try to lose their many memory, especially. And what we have seen is many treatments in recent years have focused on amyloid plaques, but Torx has taken a different approach in this. So I just to explain how your team has chosen to target tau pathology instead. If just correct me if I'm right, it's dog pathology instead, and how does that reflect where the science is heading? And we're talking about the memory loss and all, but because once the memory is lost, this is what is concern is coming. Then how it can it be like it can be, it has a something reversal, like okay, it can come back with this treatment, or it's
So lots of questions there, and I'll start with that
yes.
last one first, actually. When you lose a brain cell or a neuron, it's a bit like spinal cord injuries. They don't regenerate. So once it's lost, it's lost. So you can
Okay.
never recover that. So there's no treatment that will recover a dead brain cell. So what we're attempting to do is stop the progression of the disease. So to let it not deteriorate further. And eventually, the aim would be that if you can pick up or identify people at risk early enough, that you would start a treatment early enough that people never actually progress to that point. Now, you raised a very important differentiation there between amyloid and tau. And the original description back in 1906 by Alois Alzheimer, who gave his name to the disease, identified both the amyloid and tau as the abnormal proteins in the brains after death of people who exhibited the symptoms of dementia. So we've known about these for a long time. Now, the markers, if you like, for amyloid were developed much earlier. It's a much simpler protein. They were able to develop a brain scan, a specialist brain scan to pick it up. So a lot of the research initially focused on the amyloid. The tau is a much more complex protein, and the tracer for the brain scan for tau was only whereas the amyloid was 2012. So it was much later. And it's now understood that the tau is the driver of the severity. So you could have a head full of amyloid protein on a scan and never have a cognitive impairment, never have an issue with your memory or not progress. But if you've got the tau present, then the brain is in trouble. So when the tau becomes abnormal and starts to spread, that is the marker of the severity of the disease, and you will be progressing in your symptoms. So you will be getting worse. So the tau is crucial, and we've always focused on the tau protein. Our founder and CEO, Professor Wishick, who's actually an old age psychiatrist, he did his PhD in Cambridge a long time ago, and he identified the tau in the tangles that were in the brains of affected people. And so he decided that's what we were going to focus on, even though a lot of the research was on amyloid. So we always looked at the tau, and that's been our focus for the last 20 years or so. And we've now completed all of our study programs, run global clinical trials, and we're in front of the regulators. So we're in that pathway now with our drug in front of the regulators, and hopefully that may lead to an approval and getting it out there for people who really crucially need some disease-modifying therapies for this disease.
That's a great work actually you're doing, I must say. And just to understand, like you said, that once the dementia has occurred or the nerve the brain cells, the nerve cells, which is a
Mhm.
cause of dementia and Alzheimer's, is damaged. You can't,
Can't get
regenerate. So how early can we detect this dementia? Because
it.
it's such a thing. Okay, I forgot something, like, no, it's taken as a normal thing in human beings. So how early and how we can, detect, like, these are the symptoms of dementia occurring to
Mm.
this person?
Yeah, incredibly important question you just raised there. And as you
Mm.
say, everyone can be a bit forgetful and they think, oh, is that actually something more serious or not? And so it is important to differentiate. And really to be clear that dementia and Alzheimer's disease is not normal aging. So you may get a bit more forgetful with normal aging, but this is a disease process and it's very different. And you must treat this differently and take it seriously and not just say, oh, it's part of normal aging. I don't need to do anything about it. Now, as you rightly say, the key is to pick it up early if possible. Part of that's awareness. And what we're doing right now, talking about it, sharing these comments with people and everyone who's listening to your program,
Yeah.
making it a good thing to talk about. Don't be scared about talking about it. Don't be hesitant about coming forward and asking questions or seeking a diagnosis from your doctor. But as you say, the earlier the better. And what we're seeing now, which is absolutely fabulous in the research field, is the development of blood tests that will pick up those early markers of the tau and the amyloid and markers of inflammation and all the things that are occurring in the brain when
Mhm.
Alzheimer's is present. And we know that this pathology actually starts probably 10 to 15 years before you get symptoms. So if
Okay.
you were able to look into the brain all
Mhm.
that time beforehand, you would see the changes occur. Now, of course, we can't do that. But
Mhm.
with the advent of these blood tests, we're on the horizon now of being able to do that.
Okay.
So we'll be able to diagnose and see when these biomarkers start to increase that potentially you are at increased risk. And
Mhm.
that is where we might be able to initiate treatment earlier and pick up people earlier and prevent the decline that you would see without any sort of treatment or at a later stage.
All right. So it's like with the blood test, we can make it out, right? Just to
Yeah,
be more,
yeah. That
precise on.
that is
Yeah.
coming. That's not fully clinically available, but it
Mhm.
will be shortly. That is certainly coming, and this is really, really providing a lot of hope for everyone who's living with this disease. It's really
All
important.
right. So that's a very, just to the audience and the listeners who are not familiar with it, it's a very good insight or information which you have shared with us. And so let's talk about your lead treatment, which I have read, and it's hydromethylionine, right? It's hydromethylionine. If I'm not,
That
it's a
name's
medical
yeah.
term, and it's I'm really getting,
Well, you've
um,
done really well to attempt it. They're impossible. Absolutely
that's what I was
impossible.
wondering if I've attempted it right. Hydromethylthionine, because I'm not from medical, but I was like just reading on your article. It's mesylate, or HMTM is the short, word. What makes this treatment different from others currently available, especially
Mhm.
those aimed at amyloid buildup? And this, when you're talking about amyloid and the plaques, because most of our audience and the listeners may not be aware of these medical terminology.
Yeah,
So if you could just describe a little bit, more in detail, and
sure.
elaborate
Of course, of course.
how it is and what about, so we can understand, all of the listeners can understand about it.
Of course, of course. So, as I was describing, there are the two proteins that are normal in your brain and needed for normal function that go wrong in Alzheimer's disease. Now, the amyloid sits outside the brain cell, if you like, and when it makes this plaque that's not soluble and forms this big, heavy sort of squashing plaque, if you like, it's like an elephant sitting on your brain cells, and it
Oh,
squashes them and kills them that way. Now, the
okay.
tau builds up on the inside of the brain cell, and when it forms its insoluble clumps, if you like, these tau tangles that most people will have heard of, they build up inside the cell and build up to such a point that the cell can't clear them anymore, and they actually swell and burst and die. So the tau sort of attacks from the inside, if you like, where the amyloid sits on the outside.
Mhm.
Now, you asked about the differences in the treatments, and this is really, really important. It's a really important question. Um, Ours is an oral tablet. which is everyone understands a tablet. Easy to prescribe, easy to administer, easy to take at home, easy to transport. So a tablet is something that democratizes treatments. You can deliver that to anyone, whether they live remotely, whether they're near a hospital or a doctor or not. So a tablet is a really important thing for a disease as widespread as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. There are two currently approved medicines that are available that target the amyloid, not the tau like we do, but they are both intravenous. Now, this means that it has to be delivered by someone who puts a drip or a line into the vein in your hand or your arm, and it's delivered by an infusion. So you need to access a specialist centre or a hospital. You need someone who can put the drip in. You need the availability of the sets that give the infusion, and it takes about an hour to deliver this. And these treatments are given, one drug is given every 2 weeks and the other is given every month. So this is really incredibly inconvenient and not something that is accessible for everyone.
Right.
So
Right.
as a tablet, we instantly avoid all of those issues. And as the whole research field is now understanding, targeting the tau is crucial, because you could have a lot of amyloid and not be affected, but if you have tau, you definitely are. And maybe the future is combination therapies, and maybe there's a lot more factors that will be involved, because it's a very, very complex disease process. So I really welcome all the research that is coming and all the potential for giving people options for treatment. So our drug is oral. It's targeting the tau, which is a really crucial target for Alzheimer's. And we have a really strong safety profile. So we've had about 3,000 people exposed to drug over the course of our clinical trials.
Okay.
And we have an expanded access program. So people around the world that have been on our trials, they can stay on the drug until it goes through the approval process. And that's important too. So we know that it's very safe. And people who have other medical conditions or other drugs they're taking, it's fine for our drug to take that as well. Whereas the two amyloid treatments have a lot of contraindications. So there's certain issues you might have with your health that also preclude you from being able to use those treatments. So all in all, we are safer, easier to administer, and targeting something that is crucial, really crucial at the moment in Alzheimer's disease treatment.
All right, that's great. That's perfect. So it's already been on trials for 3,000 participants, as you mentioned. So, and you have specified how the safety of this drug is on, actually. And the safety and tolerability are the key concerns for the patients and the families, what I understand. And you have already, with your 3,000 participants, it has been a success, right? That's what you have highlighted on this. So now, just want to know, you've mentioned about two plaques, because of the listeners, some may not be aware of this amyloid plaques, and then you're talking about the tau, right?
Yes.
So I just want you to, just a little bit more to be, explain a bit to for our audience or the listeners who are not aware of this medical terms, to be just more specific on what the difference is between these two.
Yes, yeah, of course. So as I was describing before, the two key features of Alzheimer's disease are these amyloid plaques, the big heavy things that sit around the brain cell, and the tau tangles, which are the insoluble forms of the tau protein that build up in Alzheimer's inside the cells. So amyloid and tau are just the names of the proteins, and they're normal. We do need them in normal brain function. They're important structurally, they're important for function of your brain cells. Now, it's a bit like when you have a cancer, for example. These are normal cells that suddenly misbehave and they multiply in an abnormal way, and then they become dangerous to you. That's a disease state. Now, it's the same in the brain. So these are normal proteins, both of them, but something triggers them, and we are not 100% sure what that whole process is at the moment. We're gaining more and more understanding as the research evolves, and it triggers them to behave abnormally. So instead of being, you can imagine them as single units that are there and do what they're supposed to do. And when they're not needed anymore, they're cleared out by the cell. So off it goes through that process. Now, when they behave abnormally, they start to clump together, like getting knots in your hair, if you like. And suddenly the cell can't deal with that. They can't manage it anymore. They can't clear it out of the system when they don't need it anymore. So it builds up and builds up and builds up, a bit like not emptying a rubbish bin for a long period of time, until
Yeah.
it literally overflows and bursts the brain cell. And that brain cell, as we said before, you can't recover it. You can't recover that function. So depending on what area that it's affecting will show up in whatever symptoms you're exhibiting and how they progress.
Right. And thank you for that explanation. And I hope it's been clear to the audience who are listening to us. It's time for our short commercial break, Dr. Sonia Miller. So we will just have a short break at 3:28, and we'll be right back in a few minutes, if it's okay with you. And just bear with us. And to the audience and the listeners who are listening, stay tuned and keep listening to a very insightful conversation with Dr. Sonia Miller, who's the medical director of Torex Pharmaceuticals. And keep listening. We will be right back after a short commercial break.
Thank you.
.6 FM across Nottingham. This is Radio Dawn.
क्या आप कश्मीर में जरूरतमंदों की मदद करना चाहते हैं? तैयब फाउंडेशन आपके लिए सदका जारिया है। चाहे वो साफ पानी हो, सेहत की देखभाल, दरख्त लगाने, मसाजिद और मदारस, तलबा के लिए तालीम या साल भर खाने पीने के पार्सल फराहम करना, आपके सदकात और ज़कात यतीमों, मिस्कीनों और बेवाओं को दिए जाते हैं। मजीद मालूमात के लिए राब्ता करें 0785-900-1369 या हमारी वेबसाइट विजिट करें tayyabfoundation.org.uk। हमारे अकाउंट डिटेल्स है तैयब फाउंडेशन, नेटवेस्ट, अकाउंट नंबर 22626077, सॉर्ट कोड 601133। तैयब फाउंडेशन, राइज विद लाइट एंड होप।
क्या आपको भी मेरी तरह ट्रैवलिंग करने का बहुत शौक है, लेकिन हमेशा ओवरचार्ज फ्लाइट्स और हॉलिडे पैकेजेस का डर रहता है? Fear no more, because at Travel Square you can book your flights, hotels, Umrah and holiday packages at a cheaper price. The IATA qualified and experienced travel consultants guide you with the right information regarding visa, health and travel requirements. इसके साथ साथ हमारे यहाँ मनी ट्रांसफर की सहूलत भी मौजूद है। So visit us today at 227 Radford Road, NG7 5GU, or visit our website at www.travelsquare.holiday. You can also contact us on 0115-671-7866. Fly better for less, because we care at Travel Square.
Looking to transform your home? At Omega Home Improvements, we specialise in turning your vision into reality. Whether it's a stylish new kitchen, a modern bathroom, elegant bedrooms, stunning tiles, durable flooring, or a bespoke media wall. Visit our showroom on Castle Boulevard or call us today at 011 5919 6871 for your free quote. Omega Home Improvements, where quality meets comfort.
Trent Estate Agents, Nottingham's property experts, sell any property, any value. Trent Estate Agents, no sale, no fee, pay only when you sell. Trent Estate Agents, legal support from Trent Law Solicitors for a smooth process. Trent Estate Agents, trusted since 2013. Call 0333 344 035. Trent Estate Agents, get in touch today.
The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever builds a mosque for the sake of Allah, then Allah will build for him a house in paradise. Jamia Fatimiyya Masjid has embarked on a 2-story extension project to provide bereavement and Jummah prayer facilities for our sisters and to also meet the social needs of our local community. This vital initiative will provide much needed space and services at 118A Berridge Road, Forest Fields, Nottingham, NG7 6HT. Your support is needed to complete this noble cause. Donate generously and be a part of this blessing. You can donate directly to the Masjid's bank account name Jamia Fatimiyya, sort code 309618, account number 033811615, reference extension. Alternatively, contact Mushtaq Rahman on 07944 290959 or Muhammad Muqeem on 07988 976743, or you can contact any member of the Masjid Committee. May Allah reward your generosity and grant you paradise. Ameen.
Radio Dawn from the heart of the East Midlands.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Radio Dawn.
17.6 FM.
Dawn.
Welcome back after commercial break. You're listening to Radio Dawn 107.6 FM live transmission, and I'm your host, Mashal Tariq, on your new show, Health is Wealth. I have brought this shows many times. We had interviews from different, medical representatives and medical directors as well on Mindful Moments with Mashal, but we are bringing you a new show, which is Health is Wealth, and where we will be discussing and talking about what health is and what new kind of medicals and terminologies which is coming. Today we have our guest, Dr. Sonia Miller, who is a medical director from Torix Pharmaceuticals, and it's our privilege to have her on our show. And we are discussing and talking about the Alzheimer's, because this is a dementia week, and we have been talking about the new drug which is going to be introduced, and it's already had its trials on 3,000 participants. So welcome back, Dr. Sonia, again on our show.
Thank you.
Thank you for patiently waiting for the commercial break with us and with our listeners. Thank you so much for your time. I know your time is quite valuable, but thank you so much for everything. So, which you have highlighted, like before going on a break, you were highlighting a big difference with the drug HMTM is taken. And it's a tablet, it's an oral tablet and not an infusion. So how important is that for patients, especially when you compare it with drugs like lecanemab or donanemab, which need IV delivery?
Yeah, no, absolutely correct. And this is really important. And as we were discussing just before the commercial break together, it's a disease that is incredibly common. We need a medication that can be delivered to as many people as possible that need it. And dementia doesn't discriminate. Alzheimer's disease can affect anyone. So irrespective of where you live or what you do or how much money you have or any of these things. And if you speak to people, nearly everyone will have a personal experience. They will know someone, whether in their family or their friends or from work or whatever. They will know somebody who is probably a carer for someone who has more advanced disease, or they will know someone who may be in the earlier stages. So with it being so common, and if you go back to the figures that you were discussing at the very beginning of the program, 55 million worldwide and 1 million in the UK, and these are going to just absolutely increase. They're talking about, the estimate is 1 in 3 people born today will develop dementia in their lifetime. And the costs in terms of social care, in terms of the health ecosystem, in terms of personal costs, so people, the unpaid carers in society, it's an enormous burden for them. And often that's at the cost of their own jobs or looking after their children as well. So it's very, very difficult. So it's a big, big problem. It needs a solution that can be delivered to as many people as possible. Now, the 2 drugs you just mentioned, lecanemab and donanemab, that have been approved in the UK and in other countries, including the US, they, yes, are available, but they have not been approved by NICE. Now, NICE in the UK is the National Institute for Clinical Excellence.
All
And
right.
after a drug is approved by the MHRA, which is the UK regulator, it goes to NICE, and they do a full sort of analysis. They look at risk, they look at safety, they look at efficacy, they look at the ability to deliver the drug to people within the NHS, but that's the UK system. And neither of these drugs have been approved by NICE. So that means although they're approved, they're not available on the NHS. So unless you can afford the costs of these treatments, which is substantial, then you can't access it. Now, for something like dementia, this is not a niche disease. This is not something only affecting a small number of people or people who, can afford this treatment. This is everybody could be affected
50
by it.
million is a big figure, actually. Yeah, it's not a and it's expected to go, as per the study which I have written it down. It's expected to go more.
Yeah.
It's like by 2030, and by 2050, it's 78 million by 2030, and 139 million by 2050. This is a forecast.
I know, and the research has been going on for about 20 years. This is the thing, that these two drugs have just been approved, are really the first in about 20 years to come to the market. And if we get through the regulators, if we are approved by the MHRA in the UK, that will be the start of the next era of medication available for people. And we will go through the same process. We'll be evaluated by NICE for use on the NHS. But again, as we were discussing earlier, being a tablet and being very safe, we can fit more easily into the healthcare ecosystem than these other treatments that are inherently difficult to administer. And they also require quite specialized brain scans prior to some of their treatment dosing, because they do have some safety issues with slight brain bleeds or brain swelling. Not in everyone, just in some people. But we don't have that. So that's also very important. And going back to our discussion on the safety, I'm a doctor myself. I know that when I have a patient in front of me, I want to know that whatever I'm giving them is as safe as possible. The primary concern is do no harm for doctors. So I'd like to know that I can prescribe this drug and that the patient will be safe and will be able to take it for a long period of time. And I will just do normal safety care and monitoring, normal blood tests, normal checking, and won't need these sort of very expensive adjunctive scans that are required by the two treatments that are currently available.
Right, absolutely. And some patients really find it very easy and convenient to have those tablets. Having tablets, then having the drips and all, which you have mentioned, the IV delivery and all. So I understand what you have explained is it's coming to a very convenient thing and it's a serious issue which people don't realize sometimes. And the bleeding of the brains and what you have highlighted here in the brain, sometimes you don't notice because it's some inside happening to you and you don't realize. So I understand there's an expand access program for HMTM and already underway, and what kind of a feedback you're getting from the clinicians and the patients, and what's that telling you about how this treatment might work in everyday settings? The trials which you have done with 3,000 patients, participants, but it's not yet yet not in the market, right? This medicine.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really important distinction to make too. Our expanded access program, our compassionate use program, enables us to get that snapshot of how it's operating in the real world environment. And when a drug gets approved, it doesn't just finish there, the whole process. It's really just the ongoing process then of monitoring the efficacy and the safety and how people manage with the medication. And this is ongoing after a drug is approved. It doesn't, as I say, just stop there. So our expanded access program means that we've been able to have people on for much longer periods of time than you would in a clinical trial. Because in a clinical trial, obviously, they run for usually between 15 months and 24 months, so up to 2 years, but not longer. Over the course of developing your drug, you need to run several trials. So it's a long wait for people who've been on perhaps the earlier studies to wait for the whole process to finish to the point where you are looking at a regulatory approval. So for those people, they've been able to stay on drug. Now, the feedback, as you say, is really important and very positive. So the doctors are happy, the patients are happy, their physicians, their families, all the people, they're doing well. They tolerate it well from a safety perspective. They manage it well, as you say, because it's a tablet form, and they feel well. So, for example, we had some patients, we have plenty of testimonials from our patients. The neurologist said they would perhaps be deteriorated to such a point or dead within 4 years, and they've been on our drug for now up to 8 to 10 years, in fact, and holding well. So this is really important that we understand the long-term aspects of treatment, because it's not a disease that you just cure. It's a disease like, say, for instance, hypertension or diabetes, where you get on your appropriate disease-modifying therapy and stay on it then to keep that under control. So that's really important as well.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a very important point which you have highlighted this about this drug, and with this, especially with the these, like, I want to ask for NHS and for more of the rural and undeserved communities which are not aware of it. So what is Torix doing to make sure HMTM, the drug name, if is approved, is accessible to those who need it the most? And when do you think this can be accessible to all, the community or the public?
It's not really possible to say when. We hope, obviously, as soon as possible, as does everyone. But we're involved now in the regulatory process, and that must run its due course. So we will know when they let us know as well, and we will let you know as soon as we can also.
All right.
How do we ensure it gets to everyone? Well, as I said, because we're a tablet, it can get to everyone. You don't need access to a large hospital or a specialist centre. So for people who are rural or living in more isolated areas, there's not an issue, and there's already programs in place within the NHS where they can courier drugs out to people. So people who need their medicine and can't get to see their doctor, they can actually have it prescribed and couriered out to them. So for people who genuinely can't get in, there is still access. Now, as I was describing before with the 2 approved treatments, there's not just the drug cost, there's the cost of all the monitoring, those specialist scans that are needed, the intravenous delivery. These all add to cost. Now, we don't have that. So irrespective of what the drug itself costs, the actual delivery is simplified. We will be able to fit into the healthcare ecosystem much more easily than those intravenous therapies. And that is where we firmly believe we will be able to deliver this drug to everyone who does need it.
That's really great. That's a remarkable thing, what you're doing, your team is doing. And I wish you all the success and progress, or further progress, and the medicine to be out for all needed. And finally, looking to the future, how do you see the target therapies changing the way we treat dementia overall? And what are the next big steps for Torix beyond HMTM? What are you looking at beyond the future?
All great questions, and yes, we've got a lot of great plans and research we still want to do and still want to be involved in. Certainly looking at other proteins that misfold or misbehave in other conditions. As I mentioned, Parkinson's disease earlier on, for example, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the football injury. These are all things we really want to pursue. But the important one is getting HMTM through the regulatory process at the moment and available for people as a disease-modifying therapy. And this is so crucial. We're flag bearing really in terms of the Alzheimer's ecosystem, that you have a disease-modifying therapy that is safe and available for everyone. And there is more research coming. And as I said earlier, the future probably holds the prospect of combination therapies, of therapies targeting other parts of the pathway, such as inflammation, for example, control of your sugar, control of other factors that might influence the progression of a dementia. And this is all very important to combine. And I think people are aware of things they can do themselves to help their brain health. The concept of brain health now, as well as body health, is taken hold. And people understand that if they look after their diet, their medications, they get some gentle exercise, they get good sleep, all of these things are modifiable risk factors that help prevent the deterioration of your brain. It's really important to look at these things also, things you can do to change your lifestyle. Don't smoke, don't do drugs, all the things your grandparents used to tell you. They're absolutely spot on, in fact.
These are very important because you need to bring a complete change in your lifestyles, as you mentioned about drugs, smoking, because then only these medicines will be effective. Right,
Exactly.
the drugs will be effective. That's really great insight and interview and the knowledge which we got from you, and it's truly been a pleasure having you on my show. And I really want you to come back again, and to announce the drug is out already. But do you have a time? Yeah, I'm just waiting for that. You come into my show and announce, yes, the drug is now and out now, and it's approved, of course. So do you have a time frame when it will be, in the pharmacies available?
As I said, I don't know because we're in the hands of the regulators at the moment.
Right.
So we have to just follow that process.
Okay.
What I could say is, of course, we have a website. So for any of your listeners that are interested in following this and looking at what we put our press releases on there, for example, and it's just taurx.com. Very simple. So taurx.com. So I would encourage your listeners to go there for more information. If they're looking about the mode of action of the drug, about the tau protein and its pathology, and the role it plays in Alzheimer's, for example, it's a really good starting point to help them understand more. Because for sure they're going to have more questions. You always have these discussions, and afterwards people go, "Oh, I wish I'd asked this or thought of this."
Yeah.
So please
Absolutely.
feel free to come back to me with any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. After this conversation, maybe I might have so many questions with you. Yeah, because it's a very, elaborative. It's very elaborative and detailed subject when we talk about Alzheimer's and dementia. And you never know, every now and then, anyone close to your family members or friends must be suffering from that. So as I will just, read out for my listeners once again. So whoever wants to approach and get more details about this drug and when it was going to be released, and also you can visit on the website, which is taurx.com, taurax.com. Correct, Dr. Sonia? So thank you for your time. And once again, we are just really honored that you have shared such information with our listeners, and the insights. And thank you for your work, first of all, what you're doing for the human mankind and for our community. So that
Thank you
is
so much for the
again
opportunity.
something rewardable. And thank you for listening to us, to all our listeners, and keep reflecting and keep connecting. So thank you so much, and bye, and good afternoon, and you have a nice evening and have a nice day.
You too. Thank you. Thank you very
It was such a pleasure having you on our show.
Thank you. Lovely to chat. Bye.
Yeah. And I wish you come back again on Radio Dawn.
Sure. For sure. Thank you.
Take care. Take care. Bye. So, to the listeners, this was Dr. Sonia Miller, medical director from Torax Pharmaceuticals, who was on our show explaining more on the new drug which is about to be released, or they're waiting for when the necessary approvals, when it will be released. And thank you for listening. And I hope this show was informative for you. We will keep on bringing something related to health ongoing. It will be like coming next week, or any important subject which is related and valuable for your health. So don't miss out our show, Health is Wealth. And thank you for listening once again, and keep reflecting and keep connecting. So this is Mashal Tariq, your host, signing off from the show Health and Wealth, Radio Dawn 107.6 FM live transmission, and keep tuning in to Radio Dawn.